He showed up at dawn, looked at her broken fence, and said he'd fix it for free. But what he asked in return made her heart stop. One night, just one condition. By sunrise, nothing would ever be the same again. Stories like this prove that a single decision can change two lives forever. If you love emotional cowboy stories with powerful twists, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who enjoys meaningful stories. Also, comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Now let's start this story. The fence lay shattered across the ground like a promise that had finally given up. Broken wooden posts were scattered in the dirt. The wire twisted and bent as if it had fought the storm all night and lost. Clara Miller stood there in the early morning light, staring at the damage with a tight chest and tired eyes. This was not just a fence. It was the thin line holding her life together. Without it, her cattle could wander, predators could slip in, and the ranch she had fought so hard to keep alive would slip through her fingers. Ever since her husband died 3 years ago, everything had become heavier. Every decision rested on her shoulders alone. Every mistake felt unforgivable. She had learned how to fix roofs, tend cattle, and negotiate prices in town. But no amount of strength could stretch money that simply wasn't there. She already knew the cost of repairing the fence, and she already knew she couldn't afford it. As she knelt down to touch the splintered wood, a wave of fear washed over her, the kind that whispers that this might finally be the end. That was when she heard the sound of slow, steady hooves approaching from behind. Not rushed, not careless, but deliberate. Clara straightened and turned around, her hand instinctively tightening at her side. A lone rider had stopped a few yards away, sitting tall on a dust-covered horse. She recognized him instantly. Jacob Cole, the quiet cowboy everyone in town knew, but no one truly knew. He rarely spoke, rarely smiled, and never stayed long enough to explain himself. People said he kept his distance because he wanted to, but Clara had always suspected it was because he didn't know how not to. Jacob dismounted and studied the fence without a word. He crouched down, tested the wire with his hands, examined the broken posts one by one. His silence felt heavy, almost respectful, as if he understood that this damage meant more than it appeared. Clara watched him carefully, unsure whether to speak or stay still. "The storm didn't go easy on you," he finally said. "It never does," Clara replied, "and it always comes when I can least afford it." Jacob stood up slowly. "I can fix it." The words caught her off guard. She let out a small, humorless breath. "I appreciate that, but I don't have the money to pay anyone right now." "I didn't say anything about money," he replied calmly. That made her uneasy. "Nothing is free," she said, "especially not work like this." Met her eyes, and for a brief moment, something flickered there. Regret, determination, maybe both. "I'll fix it for free," he said, "but I have one condition." Her stomach tightened. What kind of condition? He hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. "Let me stay here tonight. Just one night. I'll sleep in the barn." Clara took a step back without realizing it. "Stay here? Why?" "I won't bother you," he said quickly. "I just need a place to be." She studied his face, searching for any sign of danger, deception, or bad intent. She found none, only exhaustion and something that looked a lot like fear. Still, the request felt strange, almost unsettling. This was her land, her home. Letting a man she barely knew stay overnight went against every instinct she had developed since being alone. "Why tonight?" she asked. Jacob looked away toward the open fields. "Because if I don't do this now, I never will." Silence settled between them, thick and uncomfortable. Clara thought about the broken fence, the empty space in her bank account, the long list of problems she couldn't solve on her own. Then she thought about the man standing in front of her, asking not for money, but for a single night. "One night," she said firmly. "That's it." Jacob nodded. "That's all I need." They worked side by side for hours. Jacob moved with quiet confidence, his hands skilled and steady, replacing posts, tightening wire, rebuilding the fence piece by piece. Clara helped where she could, handing him tools, clearing debris, holding the wire in place. They spoke little, but the silence between them felt different now, less tense, more focused. With every repaired section, the ranch seemed to breathe again. By late afternoon, the fence stood tall and strong, better than it had been before the storm. Clara felt a strange mix of relief and gratitude, along with a growing curiosity about the man who had done all this without asking for anything she could measure. She insisted Jacob join her for dinner, and after a brief protest, he agreed. They sat at the small wooden table in her kitchen, sharing a simple meal. Their conversation stayed light, touching on the weather, the land, the way the town had changed. Yet beneath every word lingered the question. Clara didn't ask, and the answer Jacob didn't give. When the dishes were cleared, Jacob stood and thanked her, saying he'd head to the barn. Clara watched him go, a quiet unease settling in her chest. The night felt different, heavier, as if it carried something waiting to be revealed. Sleep came slowly. Every sound outside made her heart jump. The wind brushed against the house. The distant call of an animal echoed across the land. At some point, she heard movement from the barn, a soft sound that didn't feel threatening but troubled. Before dawn, Clara woke suddenly, her heart racing for reasons she couldn't explain. She dressed quickly and stepped outside. The air was still, almost unnaturally calm. The barn door was open. Inside, Jacob alone on a bale of hay, his shoulders slumped, his face buried in his hands. He looked up when he heard her footsteps, his eyes red, his expression raw. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to make things strange." "What's going on?" Clara asked, her voice softer than she expected. Jacob swallowed hard. "This land used to belong to my family. Before your husband bought it." The words hit her like a sudden gust of wind. He continued, his voice unsteady. "We lost it years ago. Bad choices, bad luck. We left in the middle of the night. I never came back. Until now." Clara stood frozen, understanding slowly dawning. "Last night was the anniversary of the day we left," Jacob said. "I needed to be here, to fix something I couldn't fix back then." The morning light crept into the barn, illuminating the repaired fence beyond. Clara realized then that his condition had never been about shelter. It had been about facing a past he had never dared to confront. And as the sun rose higher, she understood that this night had changed far more than a broken fence. The truth settled between them. She looked past Jacob through the open barn door, heavy but honest, toward the fence standing firm in the morning light. It was strange how something so simple could hold so much history. She finally understood why his hands had worked with such care, why his silence had felt respectful instead of distant. He wasn't just repairing damage. He was touching a wound that had never healed. "I didn't know," Clara said at last. "My husband never talked about who owned this land before us." Jacob nodded slowly. He probably didn't know the whole story either. Folks didn't ask questions back then. My father lost everything in one bad deal after another. By the time he realized it, it was too late. We packed up what we could and left before sunrise. I was a boy, but I remember looking back at this place, thinking I'd failed it somehow. Clara felt her chest tighten. She had carried guilt of her own for years, blaming herself for things she couldn't change. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "For what it's worth, this land mattered to my husband too. He loved it. He fought to keep it." "I know," Jacob replied. "That's why I never hated him, or you. I just hated myself for not being strong enough back then." The silence that followed was different now. It wasn't awkward or tense. It was the kind that comes after truth is spoken, when there's nothing left to hide. Outside, the sun climbed higher, warming the earth, lighting the fence like a quiet promise kept. "You don't have to leave right away," Clara said gently. "Have some coffee at least." Jacob hesitated, then nodded. They walked back to the house together, the barn door creaking softly behind them. Inside, the familiar smell of coffee filled the kitchen. They sat across from each other again, but this time the space between them felt smaller. "You know," Clara said, staring into a cup, "when my husband died, everyone told me to sell. Said I couldn't handle this place alone. Some days I almost believed them." Jacob looked at her. "But you didn't." "No," she said. "Because this ranch became my way of surviving, of proving I could still stand." Jacob smiled faintly. "Then I guess this land has a habit of saving people." They finished their coffee in quiet understanding. When Jacob finally stood, Clara knew the moment had come. He picked up his hat, his movement steady, lighter than the night before. "Thank you," he said, "for trusting me, for letting me face this." "Thank you for fixing the fence," Clara replied, "and for being honest." He walked outside, saddled his horse, and paused one last time by the fence. He ran his hand along the smooth wood, as if saying goodbye to something old and heavy. "I won't forget this," he said. "Neither will I," Clara answered. Jacob mounted his horse and rode away, the sound of hooves fading into the distance. Clara stood there long after he disappeared, watching the horizon, feeling a sense of calm she hadn't known. In years, the ranch felt different now. Not easier, not suddenly free of struggle, but steadier, like something had shifted into place. Days passed, then weeks. Life returned to its familiar rhythm. Mornings came early, work filled her hands, and the fence continued to stand strong. Yet Clara often found herself thinking about that night, about how close she had come to losing everything, and how help had arrived in a form she never expected. One afternoon, a small envelope appeared tucked into the fence post near the road. Clara found it while checking the line. Inside was a short note, written in careful handwriting. "Thank you for giving me one night. It gave me back a piece of myself. If you ever need help again, you know where to find me." There was no name. She didn't need one. Clara folded the note and slipped it into her pocket, smiling softly. She looked out across her land, the fields stretching wide and open, and felt something new take root inside her. Hope not loud or dramatic, but steady and real. The fence that had once symbolized fear now stood as proof that broken things could be mended, that the past didn't have to own the future. And sometimes the conditions people ask for aren't about taking something away, but about finding the courage to finally let go. As the sun dipped low, casting golden light across the ranch, Clara returned to her work, stronger than before, knowing that one quiet act of kindness had changed everything overnight, not by fixing wood and wire alone, but by healing two lives that had been waiting for far too long to be set right.